it's so much easier when you can visually look at something, so that's great that you've already looked at that.
I do have a contact for, they were called Price Brothers, that put together Avignon and Olinda. And the plan and I spoke with said that they're very kind and very amiable and very willing
Right.
to
Well, my thought would be to try and look at them all in one afternoon instead of separate field trips. We could kind of.
Shannon lives in Olinda, right?
Yeah.
And so she took like 60 photos of Avignon and others. If we had time yet to even look to see if there are other places maybe if you go to Olathe to look at.
Okay,
as
great.
Well.
We'll coordinate that and set that up, and we'll try and get some kind of a schedule that will accommodate everyone here. I guess we can go ahead and, why don't we go ahead and move on to the, actually each zoning category,
Yeah, that's
what our
kind of jumpy
recommendations
to
are,
here, yeah.
and what you think will work and what you think we should change.
We have 2 tables, is that right?
Yes. It's divided out into.
You want us to look at our old minutes for this, or is it in here?
It's actually in there.
Yeah, we have the, oh, go ahead.
Okay, great. I got you.
Yeah, the first table is just purely what was discussed 2 weeks ago. And then the second table contains all of the information, just like last week, plus a comparison with what we came up with 2 weeks ago. Does that make sense?
No.
The first one is kind of a blow-up of what.
This is the new proposed
This is-
for
Right.
This is what we
districts,
want
yes.
to do.
Then the one that's landscape shows the original 3 that we discussed.
And what we
Plus
decided
the
we
4th
wanted
one
to do.
is the preferred, I guess, at this point.
Well, and the parking, I had discussed this with Cheryl. Correct me if my memory is wrong or right, but the parking, we had decided to go along with what Lee Summit had adopted in theirs. And it was different when you got to the higher density multifamily, but it was very comparable to our current ordinances. So I just wanted to make sure that the parking, if you look at the low density and the medium density, it was 1.5 spaces per 1 or 2 bedroom, 2 spaces per 3. That was real similar to what we currently did, and we kind of, it was towards the tail end of the meeting, but I believe we were wanting to have it similar to our current ordinances regarding parking. Is that correct?
That isn't, see, if you go to Blue Springs MF10 is what we are tentatively calling it, rather than RP10 or RP2. This is on the first page here. The parking starts with 1 space per efficiency unit, 1.5 per 1 or 2 bedroom unit, 2 spaces per 3 or more bedroom unit. Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, because Cheryl did not know what our recommendation had been for the parking requirement.
That's what I had in
For the
mind.
first one.
For the first
Yeah.
one.
Oh, for the
Yeah.
first one, it was 2 per dwelling unit, and 1 must be fully enclosed. I remember that
Which is
everybody
Lee Summit.
liked the
Yeah.
idea of having one
Yeah,
that
so
was
you have
fully
that right on here.
enclosed.
Okay.
Highlighted that one. The 2 family. So you have that on your table. Yeah. So, like I said, I think we matched these up pretty closely.
And then the square footage we've got matched, because that was the question that we had, where staff was going to calculate the square
Yes, and that
footage.
is, if you go back, I'm sorry, that's number 5 on that first few pages of the packet there. Well, too far. The
What
first
page?
is,
4 or 9?
well, I'm looking here, it's,
It's, the top of the page says active open space definitions, go down, there's a small
So
table.
that's
at the
actually
bottom.
the second.
yeah, but there's a second page, I think, it's out of order. There
Some
you
of
go.
them are 2 pages.
Just in mine.
Okay, how, is this not in yours?
I don't have it.
Is that's at the bottom, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
6
Oh,
right
is it the
here.
bottom? Okay, yeah, that's right, I'm
It's
sorry.
the bottom of the second page.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Number 6.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
there we go.
That's number 6. We could find it. That shows the, is that what you're talking about, the
Yeah.
kind of units per acre, what the
Right.
equivalent would be? So you see there, that's why we're going to MF10 is 10.8, MF14, 14.5, MF18, 18.15. So again, if you're looking at the MF versions, you go from 10.9 to 14.5 to 18. So they match up. And then the two family, really just changing hardly anything, right? 9.6 to 10.9.
The setback on the garages was going to be different.
Setback.
Remember the garages, it was going to be 30 feet, where was that?
Yes, and
On the setbacks, that was going to be a difference from our
maybe
current
ahead
ordinance.
or lost. The yellow highlighting. The yellow highlighting are the ones that we were kind of hoping we could get some more clarification and direction on. Building coverage, side yards, and open space. But you're saying maybe the garage setback was
No,
questioned?
what I'm saying was, you were saying it's pretty much the same as our current ordinance, but,
No, I'm just saying the units per acre
all right, yeah, that's the same.
was different, was the same essentially. But
I thought we did away with the building coverage.
that was the question. I
That was
think
the-
we had kind of conflicting notes. We weren't quite sure if that was completely eliminated, if we're going to just fully rely on the open space to cover that, or
Yeah,
have
that-
both, or
Won't the building coverage and the open space requirements kind of,
right
offset
I mean, you
each
have
other,
both,
so-
or you one or the other, and yeah, I guess that's why we highlighted the open space. Okay, I'll let you jump in with the open space question.
Okay, well, with respect to the building coverage, Olathe has it in their code that they go ahead and do it. And what I liked about it was that it was 60% maximum coverage of both buildings and paving.
So,
Period, so that way you have that remainder of.
you're on two-family on that?
Yes, this is two-family. This is actually consistent all the way through their code. So this is from the Olathe code with respect to building coverage.
well, and you know, we're mixing and matching Lee Summit and Olathe.
Mhm.
So if we're going to borrow from Olathe, we have to make it consistent in the areas that it needs to be consistent.
Correct.
So you think if we make it the 60%, and that's, because we're taking the open space from Olathe, not Lee Summit.
That's correct.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's why the building coverage and the open
Also,
space
is also
match
from Olathe.
together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they do match.
Yeah,
They do
because I
match.
think when we discussed the last meeting, we were talking kind of exactly both.
We want to make sure.
Both parts. We're doing
because
Lee
we're
Summit
sharing
one,
from both.
Olathe from the other.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
So you all think the 60% needs to be in there to keep it all consistent with what we're taking from Olathe?
it makes it a lot more simple
I think it.
to follow along and do the math, I guess.
Yeah. It may not be necessary, but it
Right.
does seem to make it simpler when you're looking at the code.
Right.
And the open space requirements, there's these empty spaces that are left in there
Mhm.
because we were still puzzling about what should be the appropriate percentage of open space. And I know Michael 2 weeks ago had talked about, wow, 40% open space with, two families. So what I did is I looked at codes all over the country and pulled out some averages of what most communities are doing all over the place with respect to open space, and then also went to the EPA website and looked at their recommendations for open space. And all the way across the board, it was consistently 30 to 40%. And I do have in here also a open space model ordinance. This is from the EPA. And if you go to page 5 of that, they talk about section 5 open space requirements on table 1. And on this table, and again, this is from the EPA, they have a base density and then they have open space required percent of buildable area. Do you see the open space model ordinance?
Yeah, I see it now.
You got it?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a table in there. So there are some federal guidelines that are coming into play now within open space requirements. So again, this is,
So what's the recommendation?
well, that's why I left it blank, is that we could discuss that. I'm just, right now, I'm just conveying what I have seen.
Well, you said
through
Lee
research.
Summit was 40%. You're saying
Lee Summit.
10%, but it's actually overall 40%.
Overall, it was 40%.
So is there any way we could say a minimum, since 40% seems to be the industry standard? You could say a minimum of 40%, but the part that we liked was the flexibility that 50% could be